Hey everybody, thanks for coming out and sticking with us for the afternoon. I know it's late, but we've got a couple of cool things to share, and we'll try to make it as quick as we can, get you all out of here. But the news we're releasing today is actually embargoed until tomorrow morning. I have an email all set with our press releases and all that I'll send to you after our presentation this afternoon. And I'd ask that you just hold your questions to the end, and we can do them all at once. We've got a microphone we'll pass around and get you some time with our experts. So this afternoon, we're fortunate enough to have James Redmond, the Global Offer Manager for SCADA and Telemetry from Schneider Electric, as well as Doug Warren, SVP of HDMI SCADA Business Area for Aviva. James? Let me grab your microphone. I think I'm
it's back there, right? Hello? Okay, if you'll forgive me, this is my first time doing a press conference. So, James Redmond, I'm the offer manager. I'm responsible primarily for Schneider Electric's RTU line, specifically the SCADA pack. So very briefly, an RTU, similar to a PLC, except it's really optimized for the remote monitoring and control of assets. Assets are in very remote locations. So if you consider a pipeline, upstream oil and gas, lift stations, wastewater networks. So things generally outside the plant, outside the wire. And what we released, it's about 2 years ago now, is our latest RTU, the SCADA Pack 470i and the 474i. And of course, they perform the conventional tasks you would expect of a modern RTU. It can monitor equipment, it can gather data using standard protocols, Modbus, DMP3. It can do this with security features you'd expect, and it can control them using IEC 61131. But what we added to it is a Linux processing capability built into the device. So what this allows our customers to do is to really marry their traditional control tasks with more modern-facing compute techniques to allow them to extend the capability to monitor their remote assets, to control their remote assets, and to report more effectively on their remote assets. And so what we've seen at the beginning, we've seen our customers using the web server built into it to create their own custom web pages. This way they can have toolless access to these remote assets. So if you like, the metaphorical technician can drive up to the lift station, sit in their comfortable air-conditioned or heated truck, look at their tablet or their phone, see what the site's doing, and then make an intelligent decision how they're going to debug it if they need to. It also allows our customers to integrate general purpose computing tasks. So they can use C in some cases. We have some traditional customers who want to migrate their solutions, but they can also use, looking more forward, Python, which is really the default language we see people being trained on for data analysis. And this has allowed exciting applications like a pressure wave solution. So you can use the data you already have along your pipeline, perform some calculations, and determine if there's a leak. Minimal investment, but really leverage that computing capability at the edge to achieve a more efficient and more effective operation. We can go to the next slide, please.
Great.
So what I'm really excited about, though, is what we provided in our latest release, extending the capability. So a software firmware release, take your 470i, upgrade it. And what we're providing is, in an IT and OT security-friendly way, the ability to integrate into a modern cybersecurity managed network. So what is this? Role-based access control that is compatible with Active Directory or any directory service that uses LDAP and LDAP-S. What does that give our users? It gives them the ability to manage their network or their operator access on their OT network-wide. So each operator can have an account. And in the same way, they already have IT manage their email access, manage these accounts anyway. They can add the ability to provide read access for the controllers, write access for the controller, control which technicians can look at which geographical controllers, and do this with a minimum of investment of time using the tools and training they already have. Further to that, we're also compatible with syslog. So again, if you consider a remote site, you can use syslog to monitor, for instance, the health of the network, the health of to track, for instance, cybersecurity problems on that network. For instance, syslog will track failed login attempts. It will create a report. This report can go to the IT asset or the OT security asset, create an alarm triggering that you may have an issue. Someone's trying to use an account to hack into a specific site. Further to that, we integrate with privileged access management tools. CyberArk, SolarWinds are common ones we heard about from our customers, allowing scripting to go in there to change the syslog configuration, to create local accounts if temporary access is required, for instance, for a contractor, and then to remove that if that contractor's finished their work, if an employee leaves. And we can do this still providing that common control, that compute capability. Our operators need to monitor their pipelines, to control their lift stations, to control their wells. And of course, in a package for remote locations in harsh environments, because that's an important part of what distinguishes as well. So minus 40 to 70 degrees Celsius, 158 Fahrenheit, if I remember correctly, and class 1 division 2 location. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Doug Warren. For those of you who don't know me, I'm with Aviva. Just so that you know what the connection is here, Aviva is a wholly owned subsidiary of Schneider Electric, still independently operated. What I'm going to talk today about is operations control, and specifically our industrial intelligence platform, which is known as Connect. And I'm going to tie it to that automation layer that James just talked about. We are well known as sort of the 600-pound gorilla in the HMI SCADA space, enjoying the largest market share globally with a number of different brands. But let's just say they are represented by this dot over here, something that historically we called wonderware. We probably have 2.5 million licenses in the field of different offers within that space. But let's say a huge installed base and still a big investment that we make every year to make sure that it stays current, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What we are announcing is sort of the evolution of that traditional HMI or SCADA offer that connects to the automation layer, whether it's one of James's RTUs, whether it's a PLC, and we've always been very agnostic about the different brands of products that we connect to and collect data from. As we have evolved, we launched probably 4 years ago, certainly 3, something called operations control, which was really an evolution of that traditional monitoring and control function, and included a myriad of other operational tools that helped that operator or technician on the plant floor do their job better, and do so more in a holistic environment, as opposed to having a BAT utility belt that had quite literally 25 or 30 different software applications on it, giving them an environment in which they could operate their plant, whether it was collaboration tools, whether it was alarm notification tools, whether it was remote access tools, what have you, to expand what they needed to do their job day in and day out, beyond just those core monitoring and control functions. We called that offer operations control. We had a version of it that was designed for edge type applications, and we had another version for supervisory applications. And better yet, it was based on a very different commercial model, no longer based on counting tags, counting servers, counting clients, but rather counting the users only the number of users. So very simple mechanism, commercial mechanism, and one which can scale with customers as they grow, and gives them limitless kind of architectural flexibility. If they want to have 6 servers and 100 clients, they can do that. They just pay for the number of users that are accessing the software. So for smaller customers who don't know how big they're going to grow, great flexibility. For large global customers who are trying to manage plants around the world, very easy way to go. That takes us from HMI SCADA to ops control. What we have just released is connectivity to our industrial intelligent platform called Connect. So now what we're doing is taking that 2.5 million user installed licenses in the field and seeking to connect them to our industrial intelligence platform. Why would we want to do that, or why would a customer want to do that? It's really about a number of new use cases that we can provide for that customer. They're using data like that which they are collecting on premise, and pulling it into this industrial intelligence platform, but then driving these kinds of use cases. So we see self-service visualization. I want to build some ad hoc dashboards that update in real time. I want to provide my executives with a dashboard, again updating in real time on a mobile device. Whatever you need, an ability to build your own visualization capabilities based on that data which we're collecting from the field. Advanced analytics. So using AI ML to optimize your energy consumption, or optimize the throughput on a line, or optimize the quality on a line. Those kinds of things that are, especially in food and bev, CPG, that are very conducive to AI. Well, we have all this data. And by the way, I'm speaking in the context of HMI SCADA and our Wonderware offers. The same is true of all the Pi system installed base that's out there. We have all this data, pull it into the industrial intelligence platform, and then the world is your oyster. Alarm notifications, managing configurations, so backing up and restoring from the cloud. And something new, which we just released, I want to say, over the last 8 weeks, so it was just before Christmas, our Aviva Industrial AI Assistant. So imagine the same kinds of capabilities as you have with something like ChatGPT, a large language model. I have a problem with a pump, and I want to find out more about it. Point the Aviva Industrial AI Assistant at your own data set, not the World Wide Web, but just your data set within your own secure network, pointed at whatever artifacts you have, whether it's documentation, whether it's Pi system historical time series data, whether it's HMI SCADA data, whatever you want, and query it just like you would in ChatGPT. And that's real. It's not something that's in the future. We released it a couple of months ago. And then data sharing. So let's say, again, you're a food and bev customer, and you want to manage your entire supply chain. Well, there might be certain data that you want to share with them. Do so in a secure way through this industrial intelligence platform called Connect, and also an ability to consolidate data from other sources using Databricks or Microsoft Fabric. So you will have heard a lot from Aviva about this thing that we call Connect. Now what we're doing and what we're launching here is pulling that data from our installed base of HMI SCADA systems around the world to feed that engine, and with it deliver net new use cases for our customer base. Thank you very much.
All right. So I want to thank everybody for your time this afternoon. Now, I want to open it up to questions as well. Please, Mark. Do you want?
Thank you. It seems like some of these attributes may have been available in prior software, like advanced analytics, alarm notification, configuration management. Can you talk about how that's different now than it was previously?
I'd say that we did not have advanced analytics on-prem in any form other than specifically around predictive analytics, targeting rotating machinery or rotating assets. That was an on-prem tool, and while prolific in the marketplace, probably didn't solve the same types of use cases as I mentioned that we are now for CPG and food and bev or water wastewater customers. So that would be the primary difference on that front. You are correct that alarm notifications have been available for some time, but I'd say in an ever-growing complexity of cybersecurity and those types of issues, to be able to consolidate all that data in the cloud in a secure way and then distribute it to wherever it needs to go, probably outside the secure zone of your control network. That is a far more flexible and manageable architecture than what would have happened in the past with multiple connections to multiple places to an application that distributes alarms, like a Win 911 type of thing. So we really see this as something that scales much better and is far more secure. Hope that answered your question.
Sorry, but I always need some re-education here because what you're describing as an RTU sounds different than what I thought an RTU was. I always think of it as an RTU as being somewhere between an IO and a PLC. So how are you guys defining RTU in this case? Is it like a traditional thing that would be in a cabinet out in the field, or is this more like an RTU that's more like has PLC functions?
Sure. So it's still an RTU out in a cabinet, way out in the middle of nowhere in many cases, unquestionably. But it's an RTU that has the capabilities of a PLC. Now, you shouldn't use an RTU to replace a PLC in a PLC application because there's a different emphasis. The RTU is designed to operate autonomously. PLC is designed to operate in a plant. A PLC is designed for millisecond or lower process timing, and RTU is designed for 10 or hundreds of millisecond process timing. RTU has lower power because, again, it's going to be solar powered. PLC, that's not much of a concern. What that does tie into, though, with what we're doing is a PLC has a different security need because it's ideally safely inside a plant. There's a lot of protection around that operational network inside a plant, so there's less demand for security at the device level individually. Whereas in the case of an RTU, controlling a very important asset, it's quite conceivable it could be on a public cell modem or a cell network, for example. So hence, I think some of the value in what we tried to do.
And what is LDAP and LDAPs?
LDAPs are LDAP and LDAP-S, or LDAP Secure, are protocols very commonly used by directory service.
What is the definition of that?
I don't know the definition offhand, but my apologies. But they're the two favored by Active Directory.
Anyone else? Yep.
Specific customer type or applications for which this solution is designed, just a curiosity.
My solution?
Well, this one here.
Or,
Certain, like a customer type, like a pipeline, or just some kind of a application, or customer, or industry, or whatever. Multiple industries that kind of clustered in this.
Sure. So one of the catalysts is the TSA pipeline directives. Are people here generally familiar with those? Anyone not? Okay, we got one who's not. Okay, everyone is aware of what happened with Colonial Pipeline a few years ago, right? So as I understand, someone hacked through the OT network, got into the IT network, affected the billing. They made the decision to shut down their operations. Fair enough. So as a result of that, there was a lot of activity in the industry, likewise recognizing the danger to critical infrastructure that resulted from this. There were regulations put in place. So 3 TSA regulations, they're public information now. So the first one, by and large, prompted a series of organizational changes at companies that operated large pipelines or medium-sized pipelines as well. The second one prescribed a series of changes within how OT is deployed around midstream assets. And these put in, with pretty substantial fines, mandates to use the equipment differently, to use the security features that are included in the device, in the flow computers, of which the SCADA pack is, but also our competitors, with the PLCs, with the RTUs. If a security feature is available, it's meant to be deployed. And further to that, if a operator, a technician leaves an organization, I believe it's within 7 or might be 10 days, I'd have to look that up, their access is supposed to be removed, again, with a threat of a financial penalty. Then Directive 3 came along, refined some of that, created reporting mechanisms further to that. So that was one of the prompting, because if you look at it, if you use a flow computer and you have to log into it with a bespoke tool, like RealFlow is the one we have a simple security feature. If you use RockLink, it's the same thing, and you go on. It takes a few minutes, not many, but you have to do that for each device. A typical operator supports 100, 200, 300 devices. So if you repeat that in a large organization, you're looking at someone having a full-time job going around and making all these changes. And so that in part prompted the vision, well, why not leverage IT for good to take advantage of this technology we know and understand and centralize this and mandate it. So that was one of the prompts. We've seen similar regulations in Australia, so SOCI. In the European Union, the CRA has created this mandate as well. So there's this regulatory push that's forcing OT around these remote automation assets to really take the next leap. So that's really what prompted that. And we've had, I've been quite happy since we've released this. We've had a lot of success with customers adopting this, primarily, if I'm quite frank, around future-proofing their operations, because there's still a lot of apprehension of diving into implementing, role-based access control using these IT techniques in OT. But they want to be ready because they know they're going to be forced into it. Does that answer your question?
Kind of, make sure.
That's to be sure, right?
No pun intended, but can you connect the dots for me? Just on the 2 announcements, are you saying that control from Aviva is going to do some control of these? Or I didn't quite connect the dots between the 2 announcements.
No, it's a valid question and one that I think sort of concerned us a little bit in me talking about an industrial intelligence platform and James talking about a new RTU. The 2 releases are not necessarily connected in any way, shape, or form. Now, that's not to say that I couldn't use one of my SCADA or SCADA applications to collect data from his RTU in the field and then push that data up into the cloud for some some advanced analytics use cases. And in fact, one of the initial use cases that James started to talk about in the pipeline industry was one where we're using that RTU to do negative pressure wave leak detection on a pipeline. So we're running a Linux-based application in the field, in his RTU, that then we pull out into a higher level supervisory SCADA system to manage more tightly leak detection across that pipeline, and Colonial Pipeline just happens to be the one who's doing that work enabled by James's RTU, because it can run any application that you want to run on it and do so in a very secure manner. So that would be an end-to-end use case. I could probably come up with one in the water industry as well, given that his remote RTUs very well suited for any remote application that has a number of scattered assets over a broad area. So hopefully that shows you the art of the possible, even though the two announcements are a little disparate. It was a reasonable question.
For you, when you mentioned about information coming from, let's say, your install bases, so it's acquiring information irrespective of who's the technology supplier. It could be Schneider, it could be ABB, it could be Siemens, I'm assuming, right? So, and then when you're deploying that generative AI models on top of that information, of course, it is kind of connecting the dots and bringing that information also about the networks which we don't own, for example. How is that influenced back into the system, let's say? Which, and they are not basically, let's say, we are talking about third party as well, right? We're not just talking about Schneider systems. We're also talking about ABB, Siemens, etc. So when we are taking that information and from the data sync, let's say, and the AI is running on top of it, some of the decisions or some of the loopholes might be coming from the users, which we don't really belong to. So how is that kind of connecting the dots?
I think it's a reasonable question, given how imperative it is today, some of the cybersecurity kinds of things that we're trying to get done. And certainly we can push the data up to our industrial intelligence cloud in a very secure way. Bringing it back, today we have that same secure link going back to an on-prem Pi system. Today, as part of this release, we don't yet have that same secure link going back to an HMI SCADA system, but we're generally providing a UI that comes from the advanced analytic that would sit outside of the secure control network. It's still visible to the operator, but it's outside. We'll get it inside, just like we did with the Pi system, within the next quarter, let's say. But it is an important point that you raise, because it's one thing to get it to the cloud and another thing to kind of run some analytics on it with different AI and ML models. But you can't do anything with it. You're kind of only halfway there. So we did the use case with the Pi system. HMI SCADA is the next one. We wanted to get the sales motion in play, so we released it here just a couple of weeks ago, and we'll continue to add some of the other essential components that I think will flesh out the rest of the system and make sure that it's secure end-to-end. And actually, I mean, the goal there is to put a display in the HMI for the operator that will pop up with the recommendations that come from AI, so that they can change the set points and realize the benefit that AI is giving them. That's where it has to go to. We'll see what happens even further down the road when that automation step goes round trip. But we'll start by providing recommendations to the operator and then see. It's going to be possible. It's going to be a matter of what maybe non-critical applications adopt first or second or third. But there is nothing that prevents it from happening. It's just a matter of let's pick. Right now, it's recommendations. Then next might be actual changes in control set points for non-critical applications, and with that is going to have to come some guidelines for that automation to say, you know, if I'm trying to increase my throughput and I'm using AI to do it, it can't be counter to what I'm trying to do with AI around quality as well. So I can't change a set point that throws my quality metrics out of whack. So it's complicated.
What type of time horizon are you saying, like recommendations today, but the next step would be 1 year, 5 years? I'm just trying to get a sense of how quickly you think that will evolve. I mean, technically, I'm not talking about human nature, but pushback potentially of workers and all those. I'm just saying, well, technical capabilities.
Yeah, technically maybe our solution needs one more step, so it's 90 days away. Technically, we're in it. Now it's going to be a matter of, you know, how far do we take it? How fast do we want it to go? And that's going to be, you know, starting with very simple, like I said, non-critical applications, and then which I would fully expect we'll start seeing some of that in a year, in 2 years. You won't see critical things like that happening where you're running a lights out control room. You won't see that for a decade. I mean, we'll see how smart it gets. I mean, it's an exciting time, there's no question. And there's still lots of questions around AI and ML and even our industrial AI assistant and really the ethical use of AI. Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of us will have seen, you know, playing around with generative AI now. I saw a guy write a song 2 weeks ago, and just by giving it a bunch of prompts and what they wanted and in terms of the type of music and all the rest of it, spit out a song that they played it at a wedding. People were crying because it was so personal and all the rest of it. How do you differentiate between what was created by AI and what was created by a musician? Same thing applies in software programming. So interesting times for sure, but we really, from an Aviva perspective, see it as part of our job to bring that technology within an industrial context to our customer base, and they'll adopt it when they adopt it. And we are not going to press them to do it in a year or whatever. They'll adopt it when they're ready. But we'll provide them with the use cases and the time savings so their people can move on to more value-added activities than these more mundane kind of control tasks.
I mean, just think about the great crew change. I was just talking to the folks at LTE and before they threw a statistic about some sizable share of people with the next oil and gas that come up with going to be retiring. We all know it's a challenge to hire a new generation to fill some of these positions. So I think this solution, you know, may be a necessity within a certain period of time, to a certain extent, depending on, you know, I'm just interested.
Yeah. Well, even I'd say something like that industrial AI assistant. How much time do you spend looking for stuff? Looking for stuff in email, looking for stuff in archives, looking for stuff in your own documentation, looking for, you know, all your different files. I mean, you spend an inordinate amount of time just looking for stuff. The industrial AI assistant in an industrial context does that with the ask of a question. So how much time will that free up in an individual's day? It's pretty profound what you could do with that today. And it's not going to replace people. It's going to give them more time to do the stuff they should be doing. Yeah. We could talk about this all day.
Yeah.
I'm standing between you and the bar. So we really appreciate the questions, the engagement. Love it. And happy to talk about these more philosophical things over a beer. Thank you very much.